Our next talk will discuss the background and issues and relationship of yoga and Ayurveda. Yoga has spread worldwide in various forms, with many millions practicing yoga on every continent, particularly in the asana form, but even pranayama, mantra, meditation, yogic deities, yogic gurus, and the pursuit of self-realization, realization of the divine. Ayurveda is also gaining a great deal of recognition for its healing practices for body and mind, for its constitutional approach, its behavioral medicine, its great herbal traditions, and its many special practices of purification and rejuvenation. One of the main trends in yoga today is yogic healing, which extends to yoga therapy and the application of yoga as a healing discipline, or you might say a yogic medicine. And here there is some confusion or some lack of understanding of yoga, and particularly yoga relative to Ayurveda. So let's first put these in their proper context. Yoga traditionally is the Vedic way of self-realization, what is called the moksha dharma, for the liberation of consciousness beyond the body and the mind, for the realization of the inner self, the Atman or Purusha, cosmic being. For this purpose, yoga employs a sadhana or set of spiritual practices, which is most well known for the 8 limbs of yoga via the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, yamas and niyamas, principles and practices of dharmic living like ahimsa or truthfulness, and then the practices, asana relative to the physical body, pranayama relative to the prana, pratyahara relative to the senses, dharana relative to the mind, dhyana relative to our deeper intelligence, and samadhi, the key practice of yoga as the cultivation and development of direct perception, direct experience, or what we call unity consciousness. And that is the unfoldment we see in traditional texts. Yoga Sutras begins with Samadhi Pada, explaining what Samadhi is, which is not just some bizarre trance, but the silence, clarity of awareness when we are no longer driven by our thoughts and emotions, but rather are their masters because we dwell in a detached, objective, and discerning awareness, with the mind functioning like a mirror to reflect the reality rather than having its distortions that color the reality, which is the case with most of us and most of the time. Then Yoga Sutras goes into the Sadhana Pada, the second part, where it outlines these 8 limbs of yoga and their relevance and their practices and their goal again of unity consciousness, self-realization, and emphasis on meditation and samadhi. Then the Yoga Sutras has the Vibhuti Pada, where it explains the vibhutis, the powers, the insights that can arise from samadhi or sanyama, and yoga practices and how they can help us understand different aspects of ourselves and also different aspects of the universe. And then the Yoga Sutras ends with its final section, the Kaivalya Pada. Kaivalya is that state of transcendence of the self or the Purusha beyond the gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, beyond time, space, and karma, our original nature, going back to the power of consciousness, the Chitti Shakti itself as our true being and light. So we see in this context, yoga is not presented as a medical or healing system directly. It is implied and implicit that these practices can have their ability not just for healing the body, but even more specifically for healing the mind. Because unless we master our own awareness, we will be subject to mental afflictions and sorrow, which are called the kleshas in the yoga system. So in this context, then, we look into Ayurveda. Yoga is the Vedic way of sadhana and self-realization. Ayurveda is the Vedic system of self-healing for body and mind. So Ayurveda arises from the philosophy and practice of yoga, including the 24 tattvas of the Sankhya system and the Purusha Prakriti idea, 5 elements, 5 sense organs, 5 motor organs, 5 sensory potentials, and how this yoga philosophy, Vedic philosophy, then can be expanded through understanding the forces of prana relative to the body and the mind, including the 3 doshas of vata, pitta, kapha, which are the forces of, generally speaking, air, fire, and water elements within us, and the unfoldment of body and mind from prana, and the root of the mind in the Atma or Purusha. So there is a great deal of overlap between the yoga and the Ayurveda, in that Ayurvedic practices of right living aid us in the yoga sadhana, and yoga sadhana can aid us in healing practices. But we must be very clear, there is no yogic system of medicine traditionally apart from Ayurveda. If we look at traditional yoga texts, they also use Ayurvedic concepts like Agni, like the doshas, like the 5 pranas. They are rooted in Ayurveda for healing of body and mind. So those who wish to use yoga as a healing tradition need to study Ayurveda and understand Ayurveda as the medical system arising from yoga that addresses all aspects of health and healing, right living through right diet, right exercise, daily, monthly, seasonal changes, stages of life, right use of the senses, right use of the mind, right use of our sexual energy, and right relationship in society and with the world of nature. Ayurveda employs the full scope of natural healing with the herbs, the massage, the panchakarma, the rejuvenation practices. It has a very specific system of understanding human anatomy and physiology as rooted in prana and consciousness, and all aspects of its treatment, and a disease process relative to doshas, relative to qualities like heat and cold, or dampness and dryness. So Ayurveda is a completely developed yogic system of medicine, whereas what is called yoga therapy today is generally using asanas as an adjunct physical therapy, or maybe meditation as an adjunct psychological therapy, not as providing the basis of disease theory, diagnosis, treatment, or all aspects of internal and external medicine that Ayurveda has to offer. So when we're looking to yoga as a healing tradition, we should always think of yoga and Ayurveda. In the Indian context, there's been the pairing of yoga and naturopathy, with Indian naturopathy being any non-invasive therapy, including non-use of herbs and other things like that. That is a modern phenomenon. Traditionally, it was always yoga and Ayurveda. And the same rishis and sages that created the system of yoga were also part of Ayurveda. Even Patanjali himself is also well known as a great teacher of the Ayurvedic medicine. And so too many of the other ancient gurus, Bharadwaja, even deity forms of Vishnu, Shiva, are also connected to the Ayurveda as well as to the yoga. So those who wish to understand the yogic system of healing, you need to study Ayurveda also. And those who wish to understand how yoga would diagnose disease and its treatment, it would be according to the gunas and the doshas and the pranic and consciousness view of the human being that we find in Ayurveda. So it's very important to integrate these two systems. And even if you want to practice yoga at an individual level, it's very important to understand your Ayurvedic constitution, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, your health potential, your energy level, your ojas, the movement of the five pranas. And yoga at a deeper level is about awakening our inner energies. Ayurveda teaches how to balance the Jata Agni, or the digestive fire, for physical health. Yoga teaches us how to awaken the yogic Agni, a power of prana and awareness to access deeper aspects of consciousness and deeper aspects of healing. So if we look at the traditions, there's no Yoga Chikitsa apart from Ayurveda. Every Ayurvedic text has a Chikitsa or therapy section, which in turn is based upon a nidana, or a diagnosis, and a complete treatment principle, not just simply asanas for this and that, but all aspects of health through diet, exercise, herbs, massage, and so many other related factors. So if we want to use yoga as healing and create a yogic system of medicine, we need to reintegrate the yoga and the Ayurveda. That is happening today. Today, after some decades now, we see that all the main yoga gurus have Ayurveda, Ayurvedic products, Panchakarma. This is something relatively new in the 20th century, in which Ayurveda and yogic connection was kind of forgotten, but is restoring that yoga-Ayur connection. And in this regard, we must remember the two are complementary. Yoga teaches us that to enter into deep meditation, we need a sattvic body and a sattvic mind. We need to have that inner purity, clarity, and awareness. Ayurveda also teaches us what are the necessary foods, practices, herbs to instill sattva guna within us. And Ayurveda, at a physical level, we look at disease according to the doshas of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, the elemental forces. But at the level of psychological disease, we regard the rajas and tamas, the aggression and inertia in the mind, as the disease-causing factors, and sattva guna as the factor of healing for the mind, which means that the Ayurvedic psychology and the yoga psychology are the same, and they cross over in many ways. And today, more than anything, we need psychological healing. And for that purpose, not just asanas and pranayama, but deeper meditation and mantra is very important. But even from the Ayurvedic standpoint, right diet, right behavior, and certain special herbs like medhya, rasayanas, for improving the mind, increasing the awareness, and balancing the doshas within us. So this psychological model of yoga and Ayurveda is also of extreme importance. So in closing, please remember the unity of yoga and Ayurveda, but also their slightly different purposes. Yoga as a sadhana for self-realization, Ayurveda as a complete medical system and a complete healing system for body and mind. And in this regard, Ayurveda is, as a whole, preventative and behavioral dimension. It's not just about treating a disease. It's about teaching us how to have balance and harmony within us so that we can avoid coming down with disease. And in this era of drug-based medicine, Ayurveda has the most sophisticated herbal therapies that can help us increase our immunity, that can help us create mental calm, calm the mind, without resorting to drugs. And yoga brings more of that with practices like pranayama, mantra, meditation, so that we can master our own brain chemistry, we can master our own healing energy, and access the cosmic prana and the higher awareness. So in this regard, yoga and Ayurveda are very important systems of knowledge and spirituality that we need to adapt globally, that can be brought into education, of course, starting in India, where these systems are more well known and more available. And as when we look beyond the outer technology for a deeper understanding of our inner being and consciousness, yoga and Ayurveda provide all the tools for optimal living on all levels, from our outer expression to the highest self-realization and union with the divine.